and I don't disagree, that the text messages between the mother, Sheila Agee, and her son, Keith, do tend to implicate her, but she just says on redirect that this was a horrific thing her child did, that she did not encourage, she did not pour gasoline on it, and her whole goal was to stop her son, Keith, from shooting Brooklyn. Do you believe it?
Well, Philip Dubé, Deputy Public Defender, believes her. Philip Dubé, private citizen, does not believe her. But Philip Dubé, as a legal analyst, says the following. I think at most what the evidence shows is an involuntary manslaughter under Florida law. If she engaged in any type of reckless conduct, would you pose some type of unjustifiable, risky threat of death or serious bodily injury, or if you just fail to exercise due care under the circumstances, you can be found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and the advantage criminally is that it has a 15-year top. And because of her record, she wouldn't get 15 years or lack thereof. Now, on the other hand, I find that when you look at the text in isolation back then, in August of 2023, in context, as typed, as relayed, as communicated to her son, there is nothing contextually sort of within or even outside those texts to suggest otherwise. And a mother's sort of dutiful sage wisdom should be what we call the coin of the realm. And really what you have now is sort of this shifting mastermind Ma Barker trying to be a Carol Brady or a June Cleaver domestic engineer supermom. But the truth be told, she kind of punked her kid into doing this and gave him the whereabouts of where Brooklyn would be and sort of countenanced it. Now, whether or not she truly intended to kill is another question, but I think criminally, at a minimum, it shows that she was either reckless or negligent and could qualify her for the involuntary manslaughter. That's just based on a review of Florida law.
All right, I want to come back. I'm going to put a pin in the actual charges and circle back to that, but I have to mention this because you just referenced it a little bit. I find the way she speaks to her son in the text messages, the language that she uses with her own son, offensive. I don't think that's how you speak to your child. I don't think that's how you raise your child. It really bothers me as a child welfare law specialist. But I have to ask this, is there the potential that that's going to hurt her credibility with at least one juror member, that they may say, okay, I'd like to believe her, but I just don't like the way she was communicating with her own son?
Of course, because let's face it, there was nothing nurturing. There was nothing in those text messages to suggest that she cared at all about Brooklyn. Because remember, in her mind, she's thinking, how dare that gutter snipe infect my son with gonorrhea or some other loathsome sexually transmitted disease? Let's get her. And frankly, I got to tell you, she's fortunate that this did not trigger federal jurisdiction, because Keith went across state lines from Alabama into Florida to carry this out. And because you had interstate travel and interstate communications between her and Keith, even if, let's say, she beats this, I could see the feds stepping in, coming after her federally. So it's not necessarily over for her. Now, whether or not the feds have an interest in a local homicide is another question, but the risk is definitely there. Now, having said that, you never know what could be going through the minds of jurors, but if the first trial before retrial is any clue, it came to fisticuffs, it came to blows in the jury room. And let's be honest here, there are regional and cultural barriers in every jury room, and this is why individuals are entitled to a jury of their peers. It is very common from region to region to parents communicate and signal to their kids in different ways what they condone, what they don't condone, and just basically how they interact with each other. Does it necessarily mean that they're giving them the green light to go out and commit murder? No, it just means that they have sort of this colloquial sort of fun, loving way of talking to each other, which could be interpreted either way. But when you're on trial, I say this all the time, Ashley, the T in text stands for testimony. And now these text messages are coming back to bite her.
Yeah, and you're right.